Hello, and welcome to the Jesu Otaku anime review fashion show. Blue is very in this year, and Jo is flaunting a silky number. Ooh, showing her stuff. Let's see what the judges think. Huh. What would you know about fashion anyway? Y'all don't even wear clothes. This is the only dress I have. Excuse me a moment.
The first time I ever tested to get into a school, I was 5 years old. What was worse than failing a prestigious private school's elementary course test was the disappointed look in my mother's eye. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, Mom. I'm sorry!
And for 12 years after that, Yukari Hayasaka lived her life with her breath held tight, waiting for more tests to pass, hoping that one day it will all mean something. For now, the only things keeping her going through the competitive monotony of academia are her mother's approval and, above all, her crush on perfect student Hiroyuki Tokumori. Before she can confess her feelings to him, change plows into her life unexpectedly as a punk with a safety pin through his lip starts chasing her down a city street, not to mug her, but to scout her. She collapses due to anemia and wakes up in a place the punk and his friends call the studio.
YSD has a festival every November, like a school fashion show. And we're looking for our model for that.
But why me?
You've got a great bod and a great look. You're the perfect match for the kind of outfit we're planning to create.
Yep.
Is that all? Then why didn't you just say so in the first place?
Huh? So does that mean you're in? All right!
Yes!
You have got to be kidding me!
Insulted and thrown off schedule, after all she has to be home to study for entrance exams, she berates the trio for kidnapping her just to try and convince her to waste time with arts and crafts.
I have a life, you know.
Whoever the hell you are or whatever the hell you do might be none of our business, it's true. But we don't sit working in front of these sewing machines down here just for shits and giggles. Got it? You think studying for exams makes you special?
No, I didn't mean it that way.
Oh, come off it! You were clearly mocking us. You acted like your shit don't stink.
That's enough, Arashi! I'm sorry that we kept you here. You sound really busy.
What a colossal bitch. She could burn in hell for all I care.
Whatever.
What Yukari doesn't know is the amateur fashion designers have a fourth member, a leader named George Koizumi, who is much more, let's say, persuasive, and he knows it.
You didn't happen to lose your student ID book, did you? You dropped it when you were back at the studio. Want it back?
Of course I want it back! It's mine after all!
If you really want it, then why don't you come and get it yourself?
Hey! Hold on! Wait a minute!
After he coaxes her into getting a makeover, just for her own sake of course, George eases her back into the idea of modeling for Paradise Kiss, the label the group has adopted for their fashion line.
So your mom must be real overbearing.
You laugh, but it's true. I want to yell at her. It's my life, so let me do what I want with it. But if she said, fine, go ahead, then tell me what is it that you want to do? I wouldn't know how to answer her. I'll stop now.
I don't see why you have to stop. I mean, all you're doing is talking about your life, right? I'll listen to whatever you have to say.
Huh?
You can be straight with me.
Yukari, now given the nickname Caroline by the fashionistas, pursues a career as a fashion model and is plunged into a world of passion, thrills, risk, new friendships, lustful rendezvous, drifting farther and farther away from the colorless life she led before, until remnants from her past leave her future mired in a mess of unanswered questions and the race to complete a dress for the show that will either make or break the group's chance at a real label. Their progress is set back again and again by George's zealous ecocentrics, leaving Yukari to wonder, Is Paradise Kiss an ascent into the life she was always meant for, or an escape from the real world waiting just outside its doors? On the technical side of things, Paradise Kiss was animated by Studio Madhouse, so you can expect a high grade of production, but it's more telling of the style to mention the director, one Mr. Osamu Kobayashi. You may have noticed in my reviews that I talk more about anime studios and writers than I do anime directors, and that's because anime series directors are a lot more like Hollywood film producers. They can have a distinctive touch, but more often than not, they aren't the creative leading force on a project. The showrunner, or head of story composition as they credit it, is closer to the director as we would see those labels. There are producers that defy this and leave distinctive, heavy fingerprints, and there are anime series directors that do the same thing, like Watanabe-san, or the other Watanabe-san, or Osamu Kobayashi, who is tremendously talented, provided you give him the right material. His touch stands out on what are perhaps the worst-looking episodes of the Gainax hits Gurren Lagann and Panty & Stocking. I mean, so bad there was fan and professional outcry against both, particularly Gurren Lagann, that I would agree with, just mother of God terrible. But for my part, I have no idea why he's been working at the loosey-goosey, melty-welty, stylization-heavy Gainax as of late anyway. Maybe because the industry is too financially desperate to create the kind of shows he should be making anymore, and Gainax is into bringing in random directors for every episode of their visually experimental stuff. So they let him play around. I guess that's it. But he sucks at cartoons. He's awful. Animated reality, as I suppose I'll call it, he's masterful at, and Paradise Kiss is exactly that, as is his brother series, Beck Mongolian Chop Squad. In my top 25 favorite anime video I did a while back, I said this of Beck. Every moment in Beck is a weird kind of sensory experience because of how true to life it is. You can smell the cold basements under the bar where the music plays. You can feel the sweat of a dead summer day when the cicadas chirp, and it's all about presentation. The art and animation here is extremely minimal, but it just feels so visceral. Beck was a show about music where you could feel the pulse of a tuning bass thumping under your fingernails, and Paradise Kiss is a show about fashion where you can feel the texture of a pattern slip across your hand as it simply slides across your vision. If you've seen Beck, or my now ancient review of it, you know exactly what Paradise Kiss is going to look like, but if you haven't, in short, it's animation that feels like tracings of reality, from the way it's mixed in with actual photographs, to the way dialogue and subtlety of facial expression is animated, to the unbelievably evocative lighting and cinematography. It feels real without feeling like the same effect could just be achieved if they shot it in live action. Thanks in large part to legendary character designer Nobuteru Yuki's choice in models, if you'll pardon the pun.
I'll be right there. There's no need to get mad. Thanks. Love you, honey.
The person on the other end was Arashi, and everyone ended up finding out about us.
The style limits motion. It feels a little low budget for Madhouse, whether that's true or not. It's just sort of the way it looks. But loss of fluidity is a small price to pay for the overall wonderful look of the show. Musically, Kobayashi's fingerprints are all over this once again. He's kind of a gearhead and rock enthusiast if his handling of Beck wasn't a tip-off, but just as Beck didn't have much music that wasn't diegetic sound in it, as in being played in the show universe itself, Paradise Kiss is largely silent. Which means when the guitars do sneak in, the effect is visceral, and it means something significant. And quite often it is guitars, but the score is pretty varied depending on the occasion. Sometimes it's weird electropop runway music, sometimes it's soft piano, it just kind of depends. But it's always noticeable due to the sparing use of the score on the whole. Also, the ending theme is a wonderfully cheeky Franz Ferdinand song, so you'll have to excuse me for a second. Yee! Franz Ferdinand! For the voice acting, I mentioned the look of the show being like animated reality, and apparently this direction was taken vocally as well, because the Japanese performances in Paradise Kiss are underacted, I guess? They don't sound wooden, I should clarify, and once again I always feel a little weird trying to judge acting in a language I don't speak, but I understand enough to tell that the acting in Paradise Kiss is realistic as hell compared to the more theatrical standards and archetypes of most anime. Looking at the cast, the majority of the seiyuu were not seiyuu. They were unknowns, TV actors, Sentai actors. Hell, the lead Yukari is played by a woman with an extensive singing and acting career, but no anime, prior or since, apart from Paradise Kiss. So the snub to anime casting customs is clearly intentional. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, you'll have to ask someone who does know Japanese if Paradise Kiss is performed too subtle to translate to animation, or refreshingly realistic and amazing, but I have a decent ear for bad acting, and I can tell you it isn't bad. I think I admire the choice. I'd like to think it sounds really good. The English dub is a bang zoom effort, so it's a lot more conventionally anime sounding. The script is super loyal to a fault, the voice direction is very theatrical, etc., etc. But despite a bumpy start, and honestly the show itself gets off to a bit of a bumpy start, it's honestly a very good dub, in spite of the direction and adaptive writing, and thanks to the casting. Now, that's a strange case. Derek Stephen Prince is perfect as Arashi, maybe the best he's ever been cast, as a character with a lot more depth and emotion than would initially be apparent, but is also naturally very funny. Melissa Fawn walks a fine line between cutesy caricature and sensitive child woman as Miwako, which again is perfect for the character. You're supposed to believe them as a mismatched couple, and you do, so that's really all that matters.
Come on, don't cry. It's not like I don't trust you, okay? So, please, stop crying already.
Then please come over tonight and we'll...
No. Come over to my place, okay?
Patrick Seitz is odd and inaccessible as George, and initially it sounds bizarre until you learn that, no, that's totally the character. He's a genius who's mastered social skills, but doesn't really understand people, and it fits really well. Julianne Taylor's Yukari I'm less crazy about, but it's just sort of a vocal thing and not a performance thing. Yukari is very clearly supposed to be a cloistered, undignified, immature-sounding character, and Taylor's voice is...
Careful, man. We wouldn't want you passing out from drinking a little bit of weak champagne there.
Don't worry, I'm fine.
eloquent and breathy, and it doesn't really match that awkward high school image. But as she grows into the character, she makes up for it in performance, working in subtlety and nuance where it's kind of inhibited by the adaptive script. She's a good actress. Overall, a very good dub that, while being more theatrical than naturalistic like the Japanese track, carries the drama of the show just as well. Both dubs recommended equally, with the caveat that the English dub is a little more stage-acty. So I mentioned before that Osamu Kobayashi needs a certain kind of material to shine as a director, and it's basically material saturated in the senses and subtleties of the real world. So what could be a better match for his talents than a story by Ai Yazawa, a manga author absolutely adored by critics for her detailed artwork and progressive character writing. I use the word progressive because while she writes well-developed and beloved characters of both genders, it's often pointed out how exceptionally her female characters are portrayed, and Paradise Kiss is a shining example of this. It's a coming-of-age story for Yukari that's not about her being a woman, but doesn't ignore the fact that she is by a long shot either. Let me explain with a little digression here. The biggest pitfall of writing women in fiction is writing women in fiction, basically. Since men have taken the default position as average human viewer, after all the phrase for that is everyman, women tend to get written as females rather than people, and all their issues are about being female. It's not just a mistake male writers make, women make it all the time too, because we follow the trends we're raised on. So many people think the way around this is to write their women as people first, developing their traits the same way you would for a man, and leaving the gender by the wayside. This is a step in the right direction, but there's a little problem with that too. You run the risk of forgetting the societal element, how the outside world reacts to a woman acting in a certain way. And it's true, society cares way more about how women look and act in the public eye than it does men. So even if you don't want to write about the character's issues that are exclusively female, you may have to acknowledge them depending on your story. And if you don't, it'll ring false. The same is totally true for men, of course, but there's much more precedent for that balance. There are more male coming-of-age stories. We understand more innately what society expects of them because we see it so often. It's easier to write about. I called Beck a brother series to Paradise Kiss and not a sister series because that's exactly what it is. It is the male equivalent of what's done here. Yukari is written as a person with internal struggles that people of any gender can relate to, but the world sees her as a woman, and the expectations and judgments it has of her are gonna ring particularly true with women. The end result is a balance so true to life that if you told me this story was nonfiction, I might believe you.
I'm hoping I can become a model.
Well, you're definitely pretty enough to.
Anyways, I'm looking for an agent to represent me.
So I heard that you moved in with your boyfriend recently. I'm sure he's been